as a sessional staff member myself. Who else here has been sessional staff at one time or another? I'm going to say that's a solid, what, half of 15, so 7. And so I don't want to say that my experience kind of encapsulates the sessional staff experience, but I think it's perhaps a microcosm of it. And I have some kind of citations and things in here about research on sessional staff. But if you would like to share your experience as a sessional teacher, or if you've been a lecturer and you have had sessional staff that you worked with, I'd like to hear about your experiences as well. So in my double hat as a former sessional staff member and now as essentially an educational designer, I have kind of noticed some things about how sessional staff are dealt with in relation to education technology in particular. So how can we make Moodle or your learning management system a more pleasant place? How can we make teaching easier or kind of more collegial, more inclusive for sessional teachers as well as permanent full-time employed lecturers? So I'm just going to go over a few, like, what are sessional staff, who are sessional staff, and talk for 5 seconds about what are the key issues in casualization, which is kind of a movement. If you're on Twitter, I recommend following the hashtag AusCasuals, AUSCASUALS. There's lots of conversations happening there, or from North America, hashtag adjunct chat. There's lots of activism and things happening. And how can you improve sessional staff experiences at the course level? Because a lot of it is like too big. Everyone says, well, I'm just one teacher. What can I do? I have no power. I can't make contracts longer, and I can't change IT policies. How can I fix it? So I have some meager suggestions for you. And I just wanted to kind of say, I've talked about sessional staff in the past and was very surprised to find I stepped on a landmine I didn't know was actually there. It seemed to be, to my great surprise, a very sensitive topic, which I was just kind of talking about how things had been for me, and people were all very kind of, someone said, that was very brave, and patted me on the back. So take this. So it's not about blaming higher-ups. It's not about blaming a particular institution. It's a sector-wide issue. It's no one's fault, no specific person's fault. I just want to make things a little bit nicer for everybody, because that's kind of my personality. I'm a cream puff, so. All right, so who are sessional staff? According to the RED report, which was published in 2008, which is an OLT-funded study of G8 universities, G08 universities, it has shifted to be the majority of university teachers are hired and terminated every semester. So it went from 8% in 1990 to more than 50% in 2008, and that's the most recent number I could find preparing for this. So if that trend has continued, we may expect that by 2014, it's more than half of all university teachers are hired and fired every semester. And I use sessional staff instead of casual staff or tutors because sessional staff work in all areas of teaching. They mark, they demonstrate, they do tutoring, they do subject coordination, they do course development. And as a sessional staff member, I have worked in every single one of those areas except for demonstration because I'm a social science person and we just like to talk. There's no machinery, which is great. And one of the other big things that's changed is that initially sessional teaching was kind of the stepping stone to an academic career. And that is no longer the case. You have now career casuals or career adjuncts who teach as sessional staff for 20 years and never get a full-time permanent position. So that's something to think about. And the other thing is because they're now career casuals, they are no longer just the PhD student picking up a class to see what it's like when they get a full-time academic position. I don't know about you, but I applied for 25 or 30 lecturing level A jobs and didn't get a single interview. So, you know, there's that PhD to academic career pathway is no longer clear. People are living too long, damn it. Thank you for chuckling, I really appreciated that. It wasn't that funny, so I appreciate it very much. So they are very diverse in age. They're also diverse in experience. You have industry professionals who come in and do a few classes. You have career casuals. You have people with PhDs, without PhDs. You have undergraduates, like honors students teaching, tutoring, demonstrating one semester. And they're also diverse in motivation. So to say that all casuals do this because of this would be in error. And if no one has seen these before, the BLAST project, or benchmarking something for sessional staff and teaching something something, it's a long acronym, but it's blast.edu.au, created this great series of cartoons about sessionals, which I will use throughout. So what are the issues? Just very quickly, as I mentioned, sessional staff are hired and let go every semester. So you're unemployed for that 3 weeks in between semester 1 and semester 2. Luckily at Southern Cross they have 3 semesters a year, so you're never out of a job because you're constantly teaching, marking, or preparing. But because of this, they are not involved in curriculum or faculty meetings, even when, for the case of large first-year subjects in particular at other universities I've worked at, they teach 80 to 90% of a 500-person class. It's all taught by sessional staff, but they do not get to participate in the curriculum development or the conversations about how the course should be run. So that's something to bear in mind. They have very limited access to professional development, so they often are not added to all staff mailing lists. They often lose access to services outside of sessions, so they don't hear about professional development if it's being offered anytime during 13 weeks when they're paid. And the other thing which is really important for this topic is that they lack access to office space and technology. And I had a little conversation with Mike Keppel this morning on Twitter. Yes, I am at Katie Digsey, and I tweet too much, and I'm sorry. Where he talked about who here hasn't a device, and people put their hands up. Whose devices, I'm going to ask now, are owned by their institution? Whose iPads, whose computers are they using their work computers? Less than I thought, so good on everyone else.
Actually, that's only because I'm a member of University Council, not to do with my job.
Ah, okay, so there's a little caveat to the device acquisition. So I had 3 devices on me, and 2 of the 3 are owned by my university. If I was a sessional staff member, you don't get an iPad when you start. Also, when I was teaching sessionally, I did not have an office. They said, we do not have the space. You can do your consultation hours from the coffee shop. I said, the coffee shop does not have a computer, and they said, well, you'll have to bring your own. That was a real conversation that I had with an administrator at the University of Wollongong. And there's very unclear roles. So because casuals do a little bit of everything, sometimes it's not really defined what they will actually be doing. And there's that constant okay, you're paid $100+ an hour while you're in class, but that's it. Does that include consultation? Does that include preparation? Does that include posting in the forums on your learning management system? Does that include the administration of entering the marks? And that seems petty until you remember that they only get paid for the hour that they're in class and nothing else. So I'm going to show you two quotes from sessional staff who have been very prominent bloggers in this area. So the smartcasual.wordpress.com, fantastic, fantastic resource. And Rebecca, the Smart Casual, teaches in digital communication, very innovative, lots of Twitter, lots of Tumblr. They taught entirely in social media. They never use Moodle. It's very interesting. They've won awards and that sort of thing. But she says that people with permanent hours and office space come up with these fantastic ideas. But then the casual staff member has to implement them. So this is a case where the lecturer does all the lectures, and sessional staff do the 8 different tutorials, the kind of coal face, where they're in the small classes with the person. And she says the sessional staff has to do these things without access to computer, without access to internet, on your mobile phone, late at night. Now, I know we all answer emails at night. I was emailing in the last session, don't tell anyone. But when you don't have that permanent, reliable income, there's a problem there. And also, another excellent casual blog is by a woman named Annalise Friend, who's a tutor at the University of Wollongong. And she says, every extra email, every kind of great curriculum, every cool technology is not something I'm paid for. No, they don't get holiday pay, you don't get sick pay, you miss a shoot, you don't get paid for that week. So every time you say, I want you to come in for a meeting, every time you say, you just photocopy this for me, remember, I don't work here. I don't have an office. I'm paid for one semester, and then I'm gone again, and I have to reapply for the same job next time. Is this sounding familiar to any former casuals, current casuals in the room? One? That's okay. I trust the rest of you. So for me, I started working at ANU really recently, and I have not taught there. So none of this you can, it's my disclaimer. This doesn't apply to you, ANU. But I was like, what resources are available for tutors? And I found this, which says it all, really, to me. Tutors at ANU is currently unavailable due to lack of maintenance. There was a thing, I found out, a very excellent and beautiful thing, but the people who made it were on short-term contracts, and they left, and then they put this message up. I think it's a bit sassy, and I like that about this message. It kind of is like this is unavailable because you did not maintain it. But this, for me, is very kind of symptomatic of sessional staff across the institution. All right, what can we do about it? I'm just one person, what can I do? So you're a lecturer, you have sessional staff who work with you. I'm going to break it down into administration, communication, and assessment, just to kind of make it a bit clearer. And I put this in, and then I took it out, and then I put it back in again, but I thought, talk to your sessional teachers that work with you about what issues they face. Ask, do you have an office? Do you have access to a computer? And if they don't, advocate. It's in your power as a subject coordinator or a course coordinator, program coordinator, to advocate for access for people who are teaching with you. And also to really, this is all relating kind of more specifically to learning management systems than to kind of casual teaching as a whole. But have a serious talk about whose responsibilities, who will have what responsibilities in the learning management system. Because then there's that, oh, a student is posted in the forum and no one knows who's supposed to answer. Is that my job? Is that your job? Have that conversation just to clear it up, And then for the things that tutors are required to do, ensure that they have access to support and training to figure out how to do that. Digital literacies or training is needed for staff, particularly for sessional staff who may have just shown up for one semester and no one knows who they are. So for example, I put the question out on Twitter to the AusCasuals kind of hashtag, and I said, what can a lecturer do to help you as a sessional staff member really make a difference? And they said, oh my God, it's the end of the semester. I downloaded 75 assignments from Moodle, and I have no idea how to put the marks in, and I don't know how to put the feedback. Where does the feedback go? I can't upload it. The marks were due yesterday. What do I do? And they don't know how to find help. And if they do, they may not have access to it, because then they'll lose their password at the end of the semester and have no IT support. So be aware of those sorts of things as well. All right. Ask in particular, this is a kind of sore spot in a lot of the casual conversations happening online, consultation with students. So during the 5 years that I taught at the University of Wollongong, I stopped being paid for consultation. I used to get an extra hour. So I got an hour for in-class, and I got a separate hour student consultation, calculated by the number of students that I had. So if I had 60 students, it was like 90 minutes. If I had 30 students, it was 1 hour. And then one year they said, you're not getting that anymore. No one comes to your consultation hour, so you don't get it. So all the sessional staff kind of looked at each other and thought, does that mean I don't have to talk to students anymore? Just because they're not coming to my consultation hour on campus that I'm in a coffee shop? How do I organize this? And there's a few ways. So for example, it's mostly shifted to email questions, right? Like, how many students come to your office? How many send you 1,000 emails the hour before the exam is due? We've all been there. But if you can create a forum for students to ask questions and an FAQ, sort of things you expect students might ask about, it can dramatically cut down on the email that you receive. We did this in a class. I taught a large first-year class from semester 1 to semester 1 the next year, put in an FAQ. My email decreased by 50%. It was amazing. And there's a study from 2009 where they looked at a multi-campus system, And the sessional staff were feeling really excluded and had really poor student evaluations. They put a forum in the Moodle site that only the teachers could see. And all of a sudden, the sessional staff reported that their job satisfaction increased dramatically. Because they could talk to each other. They could create that sense of community. When they're isolated being at 5 different campuses, now they can ask each other questions. Who's having trouble with this? Oh, here's a great resource I found. And the students couldn't see it. It really made a difference for that class. And another thing that I'm working a lot on in my current role at ANU is trying to make marking more efficient, and also how to negotiate when you have a lot of assignments delivered online. So in this case, if you're using Moodle, use the marking guide and the rubric tools attached to the Moodle assignment submission. Or if you're using Turnitin, use GradeMark. You can put all the frequently used comments in there. All the tutors can add to it. Dramatically streamlines the marking. But at the same time, that sounds great. Make sure that the sessional staff have access to training to show them how to do those things. Or else you're just adding a layer of complexity that's not supported. Does that sound good? Some of this is just kind of good teaching, practice, but some of it needs to be said anyway, based on the people I talk to every day at work. And also, have a really good conversation about the criteria for marking assignments. Again, I come from a social science sort of area. There's usually a reflective assignment, like, what did this all mean to you? Or critical thinking, that's another one we like to put in. No one knows how to assess critical thinking or reflection. There's like no criteria about.
Yes, there are.
Well, there are, but I mean, it kind of think about the context of sessional staff.
I do.
Okay. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, I can. You can't just stand there and say that doesn't happen, and that doesn't exist.
I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying that the conversations in a lot of large, busy classes, I don't think the conversation happens between the lecturer, who may work at the academic development kind of areas to develop that criteria. I don't know how often it gets filtered down to the sessional staff, is my concern. I agree that it all completely exists. There's like an entire library of resources on reflection and how do you do critical thinking and that sort of thing. I just think that I have witnessed, so part of this is anecdotal, as I gave at the beginning, but I have witnessed this kind of reflection. The lecturer hasn't made clear to me, how do I mark a reflective essay? What does that mean? So I just want that literature to filter down through the teaching levels. Yeah, I totally take your point, though. Thank you. And this is another big one. If you don't have an office and you're not located on campus, and you need to have a markers moderation meeting, where do you do it? Take advantage of tools like Adobe Connect. When I taught at Southern Cross, we were located in 3 different cities. None of us ever saw each other. I've never met any of them, actually, now that I think about it. And we would have our markers moderation meetings in Adobe Connect. Someone would throw up the essay that we had all pre-marked, a kind of example, show us an example of a good, medium, and excellent papers, and let's look through what makes one. And by using this tool, I didn't have to drive an hour and a half to the Gold Coast campus to have this meeting. And if you don't have an office and you're not located anywhere near, if you're an external tutor, this can really, really make a difference. And this next one is somewhat controversial in conversations where I've had this talk with people. Sessional staff are often paid by the word for assignments, at least at the 2 universities that I have taught at and several others that I have read about. So if you're paid by the word and you have assignments like blogging or forum posts and that sort of thing, students get really into it and they might write 10 times more, and that's beautiful, right? Oh, they were so engaged with this topic, they wrote 500 words instead of 250. Maybe that balances out the person who wrote 25 words, but we go with what we can go with. But if a sessional staff member has many students who are writing twice as much, it's kind of this kind of snowballing unpaid labor. So it's up to the lecturer to decide if this is appropriate or how they'll deal with assignments that are much longer than required. But to think about enforcing word limits, I have worked with a lecturer in my previous role we had this conversation, and he said, I refuse. And he gave me many excellent reasons why, and it's his course. So, you know, I can't kind of parachute in and change everything. I want them to be engaged and so on, but, you know, think about how your tutors are paid for marking assignments and factor that into how you enforce word limits. All right. Any educational design, IT, support, systems administrators in the room? One. You're the unlucky target who just fits every category, aren't you? That's great. In case you are one or are going to talk to one in the near future, find out what specific training and support is available to sessional staff. A lot of people have said, why can't they just use what's already out there? For some things, sure, like guides to how to upload and mark assignments, that can all just be, that's kind of, you know, default. But think about this, the different types of challenges, the different types of demands that sessional staff might face, and look into if there is support targeted at them that takes this into consideration. And because sessionals are often not paid for professional development, in some cases they are, in many cases they are not paid for any professional development, make your resources openly available. Put them on the open web. They don't have to log in. Over the summer, if you lose your access to the IT support, you don't have to log in to access it. Very important. And to develop communication methods for talking to sessionals who may have an account one semester and not the next. So like email lists are a main way of communicating with people. If you don't have an institutional email address, you're out. So think about how you would contact them and kind of advocate for that. Offer training and seminars very flexibly, on campus, off campus, online, blended, et cetera. And of course, when you have a chance, say loudly and proudly, please pay sessional staff to go to training. I was at a meeting the other day recently, and there was a conversation between several administrators going, sessional staff, yeah, do they have an induction? Oh, I don't know. Does anyone know? Let's look it up. And they found that tutors at ANU closed down website. Oh, well, how do they get paid for marking? Like, how do they learn how to do marking? Oh, I don't know. Like, these are conversations that happen on a school and a faculty level. So, you know, if they don't know how to find it and they're supposed to be in charge of it, how does anyone else? And last but not least, these are things that are more difficult to change. You know, if I was in charge of the world, I could sweep a wand and make it all happen, you know, instantly. But change policies around when user accounts close to cover that time over the summer, so that people can still access, they don't lose like library access or, you know, email access over the summer. I talked about paid professional development already. Investigate alternate forms of contracts and hiring. This is a big issue with think about the administrative burden placed on a university when they have to hire thousands of short-term casual staff and enter them manually into the system, and everyone has to fill out a CV and a selection criteria every semester. I'm not saying it's the same at every university, but that's a theme in kind of sessional staff, hiring processes, that it's inefficient and often requires multiple applications every semester. And, you know, then it just gets more and more complicated. Clearer pathways from sessional positions to permanent positions. This is my last slide, so I'm right on time. I planned that. And also, we need a little bit more research into how casualization works, how it's affected, how it affects people, the processes of how sessional staff work in subjects. We need a lot more concrete research. There is a lot out there, but I think, you know, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how it works and what's happening will only help. And also to commit to implementing recommendations that are made by reports into this. So it's great to commission a report and it looks really shiny and they've got their, like, you know, do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, please, and then nothing happens. So when this research is commissioned, I think a really important part is to commit to implementing the recommended changes. That's about it, I think. It'll go to the end. Thank you. Happy to take any questions, to talk a little bit more. I think I have exactly 5 minutes left. Hello.
Katie, I came in a little bit late.
That's okay.
Can you tell me where that information came from?
Which particular part?
all
All
of it?
of it. It came from, I know I haven't put references in, and I'm super sorry. You can fail me on the referencing component of this. I can give you several articles. Some of this comes out of, a lot of it I came up with just now, like for this presentation, not as in this second. A lot of the recommendations are things that I have seen in my experience, which I think would help. The idea to put in forums to reduce student email, and the idea to put in teaching-only spaces and that sort of thing comes from a report from 2009 by Sterling and Percy et al. There's like 50 authors, I think. A lot of it comes from the Red Report, which is, Percy is definitely one of the authors, and I can send that around as well. So that was a report into recognition, enhancement, and development for sessional staff. If you just look up Red Report 2008, it should pop right up for you. But a lot of it, as like I said, it's an area that I'm kind of going from. A lot of this is, what are the issues? How can we potentially address that? Most of it is untested, so I welcome any attempts to implement and report on how it goes.
Yeah, I think you might find that many universities are already addressing all this. Yeah, it's already sort of up and running in
Great.
programs. So.
Fantastic, thank you.
One more question.
I want to preface what I'm going to say by the fact that I've never been a career casual or done any casualisation. I was very lucky to get the first academic job I ever applied for 3 weeks after I started my PhD. So,
Congratulations.
No, it wasn't anything. It was luck. It just turned up at the right moment. So I haven't been there, but I have worked with a lot of sessional staff, and I'm now in a position to be leading on strategic policy to do with teaching and learning sessionals. So I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of what you say is, as we've just said, is something that we are addressing at the institutional level. There are conversations like this going on. But there's quite a lot of what you say here is factually wrong, or is stuff that we are stuck with by Commonwealth legislation. You know, a lot of the HR stuff, contracts, all that kind of stuff, we can't do anything about. We're kind of stuck with it. But things like the hourly rates that we pay casual staff, we have to figure it out somehow. And we have to figure it out by things like hourly rates and student load and stuff like that. Those hourly rates cover all the other things, you know, like marking, preparation, all that kind of stuff. What was that? Well, that's what they're calculated to do. We have to calculate it somehow. That's kind of how that works.
I take your point that this is a personal essay as opposed to a rigorously peer-reviewed sort of piece, and I would like to take it as such. But I also think that those conversations about how things are paid might not reflect the kind of lived experiences of the casuals.
What I was going to say, that's how we calculate it. Whether it's fair or not is not, you know, it's another conversation, but it is what it is, and it's calculated that way. We can't possibly pay people for every piece of work that they do because the administrative costs would make it prohibitive. And one of the things that I wanted to put to you, though, and ask you about is that from where I sit, from where I'm looking at moving into a fee deregulated market, whereas I sit as an Associate Dean for Education and a large faculty group at university, I'm going to say this out loud. Sessional staff constitute a huge risk for me. They're a huge vulnerability for me in a fee deregulated market. Because a lot of the problems I find myself mopping up from, say, semester 1 2012 were caused by a sessional staff member who's now left the building and taken on the paperwork with them.
Oh, I absolutely agree, yep.
What I'm up against is how do I provide adequate and appropriate training for sessional staff to make sure that those risks are minimised without it costing me so much that I may as well employ a full-time staff member to do it first.
Well,
Just very quickly.
It's a very, I guess what I'm putting to you is this is a balance that we strike, and how do we work with you or with the sessional staff to get that balance right, so that we're getting the quality teaching and the teaching experience, but also making it affordable.
yeah, it's because of this casual, like there's this double risk, right? Like if you are a casual, you're not going to turn down a 6-month fixed-term contract for 8 more weeks of teaching. So people leave mid-semester all the time.
That conversation offline, just in the interest of time. We have our next presenters with us now. Thanks very much, Katie.
Thank you. You can just, I'll give you this. This is important. I don't want to leave with this.
Leslie.
We have